Welcome to the Crypto Swamp Creatures, the show you never knew you needed and still don't want anyways. I'm Christopher Alexander, your blockchain and advocacy communications expert.
And I'm Justin WallIn, your guide through the often murky world of politics and polling.
Every week, we dive into the intersection of crypto, policy, and politics without taking sides. We're here to give you the straight, data-driven analysis that influences the decisions of those who want to win or want to be elected.
Think of it as a late 80s newscast, but with a twist. We bring you the serious stuff, but with a dash of sardonic wit and just a hint of irreverence.
So whether you're a crypto enthusiast, a policy wonk, or just someone who appreciates a data-driven approach, this is your place.
We bring you both sides, weigh the impact on crypto, and then we share what we use for show prep every week on our medium.
So remember, no one is as smart as someone who agrees with you, and now get ready to enter the no swamp zone. Well, welcome to the inaugural edition of the Crypto Swamp Creatures podcast. I think we just barely even named it a few hours ago, Justin. My name's Christopher Alexander. I'm here with Justin WallIn. And what we wanted to do is have some conversations about policy, about cryptocurrency, elections, everything sort of tied around it, because we think it's kind of the show you never knew you needed and probably don't want. Justin, you know, I think to tell someone why should you listen to this or listen to us, you know, we're not particularly important. You are able to get a table at a Diplomat in DC easily and know where to get surgical cuffs at a tailor. So that way people now know we're legit. But, you know, we may not be particularly important, but people who want power, people who want to achieve things in Washington, DC, they listen to us, they pay us. And so Justin and I talked and we thought it would be great to kind of include you on the kind of conversations we might have with clients, with people we're advising, and, you know, hopefully make it entertaining. Justin, you maybe want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Justin WallIn. I own an opinion research firm. I'm in the business of figuring out what people think and seeing if you can move that thought or behavior. So it's a core part of communications. We've worked together a lot over the years, and folks, for whatever reason, listen to us.
Yeah, and I work in strategic communication, also do some advising on Bitcoin and blockchain projects, reputation management for folks in blockchain. So Justin's sort of on the research audience analysis side. I'm kind of on the messaging side. Those things always cross over. And, you know, Justin, we worked on a $80 billion infrastructure program for Amtrak. We did some suicidology work for SAMHSA and a couple other things together over the years. So, you know, I'd hire you. I did. You know, what we kind of wanted to do with this format is talk about key issues in the news and then maybe bring in a little bit of the inside baseball of politics in this. And when we say politics, we mean politics, not ideology. We probably will offend everyone. I guess hopefully we do that. We're not here to be ideological. We're here to talk about problems. We're here to talk about opportunities for both sides of the aisle, right or left. And ideally, you know, for crypto, maybe no side of the aisle. But as we'll talk about here, it doesn't look like it's gonna quite work that way.
Yeah, I mean, what we do is we're hired to affect change. And while we may have opinions, you probably won't really suss them out too much. You know, we're hired by everybody. And I think that's what might be interesting about these conversations is what's really fun is the game of how you can sort out achieving change, affecting change. And a lot of folks approach that from an ideological perspective. We're not condemning that in any way, shape, or form. It's just not our perspective. So we work on behalf of those folks. We work on behalf of folks who are incented by different items, different things. But that's not what this show's about.
No, and you know, we have opinions and perspectives on our own, and we're going to generally try to keep those out and just have an apolitical discussion. So for this week, there's some pretty big news across the board going on, and we thought we might focus there. Other shows, we're going to have some different people on to talk to them about that intersection of crypto and policy and elections. Always love kind of bouncing ideas off of Justin, kind of where we at in the polls and the like. But, you know, we'll kind of start with big crypto news, and it doesn't get bigger, of course, than the recent market drop. lot of different factors behind that, but crypto took a bit of a tumble, which is to say Bitcoin took a bit of a tumble, and typically so goes Bitcoin, so goes the rest of the crypto market. So, Justin, you and I are neither of us are economists, but bad jobs report, issues in the Japanese stock market, quite a bit going on. How does this affect candidates, and where is economy, you think, kind of for voters in this election cycle?
But it's funny because it moves really, really fast. When the bad jobs report came out, anyone who is blue is looking at that right away and thinking this might be good because we might get rate cuts before the election, and that's just going to turbocharge any commentary about the economy and how Democrats are overseeing a nice soft landing. What a difference 24 hours makes, right? So as markets crash around the world, including here in the US, then suddenly we start to be in panic mode because by any measure, this is not, there's a lot of different things to unpack on why those markets are getting hit, but by any measure, there are problems. So no one can really point towards it and say, this is a success. Is it opportunity for Republicans? I mean, the economy in general is opportunity for Republicans right now. It continues to be. I'd be really careful about hanging my hat on this particular bit of news.
And of course, Bitcoin loves rate cuts. Oh my God, does it love rate cuts? So frees up liquidity, money moves in. So I imagine if we get rate cuts, you're going to see huge inflows into the ETFs, both Ethereum and Bitcoin. And by the way, like there's still money flowing into those. So when you go back onto the crypto side, plenty of people buying the dip. By the way, not going to give a lot of financial advice on here. Buy low, sell high. We really want to focus on policy. So now, kind of tying crypto to policy. Big news when former President Trump went to Nashville last week. It's still kind of reverberating. And for people who are maybe into policy more and crypto less, big Bitcoin conference, huge, to quote President Trump, I'm sure. Trump appeared, and another person who is important to know, Senator Cynthia Lummis, was there and talked about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So a lot to unpack there, but it's important. And again, Justin, really curious to talk to demographics about Bitcoin, about crypto, and how this might impact voting. But to start, so everyone understands it, Trump, in his colorful way, said that he thought we should have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. He's a delegator; that's his style. There's not a lot of detail. The detail came from Senator Lummis, who has a white paper. I encourage people to look at that, our policy paper, and consider it. But essentially, the idea is that the United States will buy Bitcoin and hold it and liquidate that Bitcoin. I think you have to hold it for a minimum of 5 years, and that will work as a hedge against the dollar. Now, the three pros are kind of this, Justin, that they would argue. One, if you continue to debase the value of the dollar, inflation goes up, you're holding it in Bitcoin, becomes a hedge against inflation, then you can pay off debt with it. One, two, should Bitcoin go up, and we'll get to in the cons there in a second, which there are a lot of arguments that it would generally, specifically, probably additional arguments that if the US government starts buying it, prices would continue to go up. But prices go up, so now you're selling it at a profit. And then finally, it becomes a way to kind of produce some standoff against BRICS and a BRICS currency and de-dollarization efforts. So that's on the pro side. On the negative side, I haven't seen an explanation that accounts for the risk if Bitcoin didn't go up. And believe me, I want it to go up, right? But I don't see how that's accounted for yet. And I'm really curious about that because it seems like a massive risk. So, the other cons are Democrats would argue they don't like proof of work Bitcoin mining, and they don't particularly like Bitcoin because it's associated with the Trump campaign now. But Justin, according to Coinbase and their public advocacy folks, think 1 in 5 Americans own cryptocurrency, and 1 in 6 are likely voters in swing states. So how important is 1 in 6 voters as a voting bloc, and how important is a single issue voter in a campaign typically?
Typically not very important at all. The blocks, there's really one big block that votes definitively one way typically, although there's nuances within that, and that is the African-American block of voters. Most other blocks that they're called, whether it's Latinos or Bitcoin or whatever it might be, vote in a highly nuanced fashion, reflecting the fact that they're highly nuanced people. People are nuanced. They don't vote in lockstep typically. There are exceptions to the rule, of course, but they aren't. And I think this question about when we start talking about cryptocurrency in general, and then Bitcoin, for folks who are actively investing them, and this is out of my time zone, this is out of my lane and more in yours, but the folks who are actively investing, those folks are passionate about what they're doing. They're investing in it for a reason. They're bought in. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, Bitcoin's a cryptocurrency, but they're not the same thing. Trump, when he says Bitcoin, he means cryptocurrency. But people who are buying cryptocurrency view them all, they see that whole tapestry, and they're unique and they're different. I think that matters. I think that's one of the challenges that policymakers, when they start talking about this, are really starting to get into trouble or potential trouble. They may not have stepped in it yet, but they're speaking in generalities, and they're speaking about what they know. And in former President Trump's approach, and I'm not knocking him over the head over this, but his go-to is to go for the biggest, the best, and so he's going to default right to Bitcoin. Anytime he's talking about cryptocurrency, it's going to be Bitcoin. I actually think that's a trait that's shared amongst many American policyholders, and I don't think it reflects the education on the topic, awareness on the topic, and the interest in the topic of the larger crypto buyer. But
stop you there. Yeah, it's a can of Coke. Bitcoin's crypto. I mean, it's a brand, and so yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. And I can't find numbers, by the way. Again, I'm sure someone's got some more sophisticated analytics to look at this, but I don't know how many crypto, those 1 in 5, 1 in 6, own Bitcoin. Presumably a large number. It's one of the most widely held currencies, but yeah, it's crypto and Bitcoin may be used a bit interchangeably.
Yeah, and when getting back to your initial point, which started this off, a national reserve of Bitcoin. It's an interesting idea, but what does it really mean other than kind of tickling an interest in, at least you think it's tickling, the former president thinks it's tickling an interest in people who are interested in cryptocurrency. But does it really reflect what people want? And is it, I understand your arguments that you presented that are potential pros, but I mean, what's a reserve, right? It's a bunch of stuff that you stick in a cave somewhere and you sit on it, right? You're not really concerned about the sale price of it unless things get a little wonky, and then you can start talking about the pros and cons of actually selling it. We have a strategic fuel reserve, right? An oil reserve. That's supposed to sit there in case we actually need to stick stuff into tanks. It's not there for cars and trucks. It's there to kill people and defend the country. That's why the strategic reserve exists. But we play with it. We dip our fingers into it because the cookie jar is awfully enticing when the price of oil goes high. And so policymakers play around with that. But how does that look with Bitcoin, with something that is an actively traded item, but it is not, it's not a thing. It's a currency. So it can be used to buy goods and services, but it ain't good and services in and of itself.
So that's kind of interesting. Let's say someone wanted to hire us, spitballing, and look at this. Is reserve perhaps a poor term to have used to define this? Is it not really a reserve? Is it more of a strategic investment or holding or something? Is that term likely to cause confusion among voters who are already going to be wrestling with, like, what is a cryptocurrency and how do you hold it?
Right, and that gets really interesting because suddenly the United States of America is potentially positing that it is going to be an active investor in world markets. Imagine that. Imagine the power of the U.S. purse investing, choosing winners and losers in the economy. You know what that sounds like? I mean, it does sound kind of like the 5-year plan, right? It don't sound like capitalism to me.
We may have swayed into the wrong side of an Ayn Rand character uh, on that one. So moving on, Justin, as we talk about policy decisions, campaigning, had a bit of a Harris head fake, dysfunction, low-level people suggesting things without permission from higher. I'm not really sure what occurred, but it was mentioned that perhaps Vice President Harris was going to speak down in Nashville. Then there's been some pretty widely reported stories that the Harris campaign has reached out to Circle, to Coinbase, and to Ripple to talk about policy, have a kind of an open channel to dialogue. Now, there's something really interesting there that I know you're not as familiar with these. Circle has a stable coin, USDC, the US dollar coin. So that pegs to $1. That's really it's good for transactions. The reason you would use their product, which I do, is you don't have to worry about market volatility if you're holding a cryptocurrency. So you don't want to buy Bitcoin today, you hold your USDC and you have $100 tomorrow, just like you had the day before. If you were to put that in another currency, it could go up, could go down, provide some stability. They're called stable coins for that reason. Then, of course, you have an exchange in Coinbase where people trade all sorts of different cryptocurrencies. And then you have XRP, Ripple. Now, Ripple is decentralized finance. It's like a Bitcoin. I'm sure the Ripple people, the Bitcoin people, and everyone in between will tear that apart, but simple terms. And they've made a lot of noise about being an overseas international payment system. Well, there's one group of people that were missing from the Harris campaign outreach stories, leaks, or whatever they may be. And that is Bitcoin miners. There's no Bitcoin Foundation. There is no Bitcoin, right? That's part of its intrigue and magic, right? It was set into motion by Satoshi Nakamoto, which may be a person or people we've never found out, and runs on these contracts. They're called smart contracts. It operates on its own. It's pretty astounding, actually. But there is no Bitcoin marketing team, spokesman, or those things. But there are Bitcoin miners, and they are important to the U.S. economy. Well, it appears nobody talked to them. And so it leads us to a really important term here, and that is a proof of work and another term called proof of stake. So proof of work is how Bitcoin works. You have something called an ASIC. It's a miner, right? It processes transactions, it consumes electricity, and a reward is paid for processing transactions and using that electricity in the form of a Bitcoin. You get that for solving a block. Plenty of people have done good explainer videos. We'll link to something. However, the main line of attack, aside from the SEC, rug pull, Ponzi scheme, get your tulips here type arguments against Bitcoin, has been the strain on the grid and electricity use that comes from Bitcoin. Proof of stake, which is what Ripple uses, is a little bit of a different system, doesn't have that consumption of electricity, doesn't have as much of a strain on the grid, virtually none compared to Bitcoin. Now, I'm not suggesting the merits of either one, but what I'd love your take on is I see a lane here for the Democrats, which is Bitcoin belongs to Donald Trump, and all of the normal names that you call Donald Trump and things associated with him, you now apply to Bitcoin. But then you go to crypto, and to the crypto folks, you say, hey, I believe we can help the unbanked. I believe this is a wonderful payment system, because it is those things. And now you have a distinction with a difference, right? The bad guys use Bitcoin, and we, the good guys, use cryptocurrencies. Is it worth the time? I mean, you could kind of fracture a voting block that you pointed out may not necessarily be all that important anyways, because people aren't just typically single issue voters. But do you think that's something they may be considering? Is it worth it? And considering that 9 out of 10 voters who are Democrats say that one of the reasons they're Democrats is environmental issues, is the environmental brush with which Bitcoin tarred just not worth Democrats putting too much time into?
Well, I mean, the caveat that the campaigns are largely one, the big movement is one on the large issues, right? That everybody kind of coalesces to some degree or another around. That's really easy to know what those are right now. Obviously, it's the cost of living. Public safety is big, depending on where you live. Some folks find immigration to be a big deal on either side. There's a litany of other things, but those basically are the big three in this election. However, it's also iterative. And you have to pick up support in little areas along the way. And that's really important when you find that there is a nexus. And the nexus you're talking about is terrific. If I were advising the Democratic caucus to take a lane, it's the lane that you just described. Because one, you can associate the big and brawny with the brand that you're trying to create with Donald Trump. You can associate all the things that are aligned in a negative stance with the environment with Bitcoin, and you can do it just very, very easily. It takes one sentence. Even a knucklehead like me understands it. Like this, I get it. Like that's a big deal. And they get to sidestep all the challenges that go with renewable energies that are currently going down. And I'm not passing judgment on this, but one of the biggest challenges we have right now with electrified vehicles, especially large vehicles, is the amount of power that they consume. It's just astonishing how much power they suck off the grid. So they get to not talk about that and hope that the twin kind of powers of ingenuity and experience continue to march their mathematical path and overcome those, where they can focus on this in a really nice, simple fashion and say, Bitcoin bad, crypto good. And it works. I honestly, I think it's a terrific approach. I think it's brilliant for them if they decide to take it. They do tend to make things more complex than they need to be. So we'll see.
And I believe, by the way, we're not taking sides here. Terrible for the crypto community. But we're going to talk in another show about Bitcoin maxis and why they should be a little more welcoming to the rest of the crypto community, and the value of strength in numbers in another opportunity. All right, so we're getting ready to close up, and I deign to call it feature every week. We have something that we want to do, and that is, Justin, you have the experience, you have access to all kinds of fascinating data. What is your big aha moment of the week? What are you seeing out there that you think people really need to know in terms of the campaign?
Yeah, first there has been a tightening of the race. We all see that. There hasn't been an eclipse of former President Trump by candidate Harris, now the nominee, which I'm sure was hoped for. But what we have now is what we had, 6 weeks ago, pre-debate. We have a tight race where the numbers show, no matter what pundits may say, and they always say, well, we're at 2 points up, so someone's got to lead, which is of course complete nonsense. They're tied. There's no one's up at that amount. But then it starts to get interesting because we get to kind of peel the onion a little bit and look at the things that are interesting. And what is interesting is the underlying shift in support. We talked earlier about blocks. So, and I'm a firm believer that many of the things that people refer to as blocks, they're wonderful to define, but they don't behave the same. And you have to look into them a little bit more. One of the key ones is Latinos. This is emerging as, it has the potential of being one of the most powerful voting groups in America. The Latinos as a group punch below their weight. They tend to vote less often than everybody else, which is an interesting phenomenon. But when you look at how they're supporting either former President Trump or nominee Harris, we're seeing a 8 or 9 point bump in support for Trump that wasn't there in the last cycle for the Democratic nominee. And that definitively reflects concerns about the economy. There are other things sprinkled in there too. Latinos are interesting. There's a reflexive assumption that Latinos feel one way about immigration. That's not true. But in this case, this is very, very much driven by cost of living challenges. And I think that is the key item. We're seeing that theme reflect in other blocks, if you will, as well. Anyone under 65, significant shift. So from the Democratic nominee support to potentially to supporting former President Trump. So those things are the things that are really going to create the divide in the key swing states, those 7 swing states that we watch, because from now until the election day, unless something amazing happens, we're still going to have a very, very tight race nationally. The only thing that's going to give us the insight on who's going to win are the key swing states, and those are our tea leaves.
And a number of key states, battleground states, in fact, do have high Latino population. So I think it just adds that compounding layer. And so from the crypto perspective, a lot of people unbanked, underbanked. Latin America, a hotbed for cryptocurrency. Something we may talk about in the future, by the way, is how people use cryptocurrency, Argentina notably in recent years, to hedge against inflation. They'll hold a paycheck in cryptocurrency because they can't cash it when they're paid on Friday and go in on Monday. And you actually had swings that affected, even over a weekend, unfortunately. So, something I'd love to learn a little bit more about in, El Salvador and everywhere else. So that sounds awesome. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up. Justin, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
That's it for now, and we'll look forward to next time. Something more interesting topics and more peculiarities of the day.
And we are, swamp adjacent, and look forward to sharing more.
And that's all for this week on the Crypto Swamp Creatures.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the intersection of crypto, politics, and policy.
Remember, the data doesn't lie, and neither do we. Well, not about anything important anyways.
Until next time, stay informed, stay skeptical, stay out of the swamp.